Meeting to order. Um, First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, first of all, for April 11th. Uh, What's your pleasure?
I'll move to approve
Second,
I'll second.
and then discuss
all,
the corrections.
yeah, any discussions? No? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
You want to just give them to him?
What's that?
Marcia has corrections.
Okay, you have.
Grammatical.
Well,
I'm sorry.
they're just really grammatical, they're not, it's nothing substantive.
Feel free to, feel free to give your, even your grammatical changes to
I'll
to
just give
Derek
it- I'll just-
beforehand too,
yeah.
but go ahead if you want.
Can we just do it
Yeah.
subject to him correcting them, we can approve them? I mean, it's
That's
nothing,
fine.
there's nothing substantive.
So the next one is the May 9th meeting.
We need to vote on
That's
that.
there too as well.
Well, we voted on the first one, yeah.
Oh, we did vote on that?
We voted on the first one already. Oh, you have some changes?
The
All right.
second one is there too.
All right, so you've made some grammatical changes.
Periods and
All right. And I'll submit them to Derek, and we've all had a chance to review them. They are just grammatical changes. So with those changes, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There you go, both approved. Okay. The next item on the agenda, comments from the heads of departments and boards. And do you have any comments?
I do. So
Please-
I am,
Please state your name for.
I will. I am Patty Bermal. I am the Director of Administrative Services for the town. I'm also a resident of the town. I live at 13 Willow Street in Mystic, if that's relevant. My input and perspectives are probably things you've already heard. They are from my human resources perspective and head of that department for the town. So I'll start with a few things. The town clerk and the tax collectors. I feel very strongly the tax collector and town clerk position should be appointed, not elected. They are no different from any other department head position, that they are profession requiring experience and skills to do the job effectively. I went back and looked at the data, and in 2015 in Connecticut, there were 121 elected town clerks and 48 appointed town clerks. In 2024, there were 96 elected town clerks and 73 appointed town clerks. So obviously to make...
Hold on for 1 second. I think. Oh, hi, how are you? Okay, go ahead.
So obviously, to make changes like that does require opening up charters, so it's not a simple process. But if you look at the data, the trend continues to move in the direction of having these positions appointed and not elected. I'd also like to highlight something that I think may be a little bit of a misconception about the word appointed. So our charter uses the word appointed throughout. All these positions are appointed. Appointed doesn't mean that the first selectman taps someone on the shoulder and says, you get the job. Appointed means we go through a recruitment and a hiring process. We have a robust hiring process that we go through to hire every single position in town, which you would do for the town clerk and the tax collector as well. We post them, we rank candidates, we have a panel that interviews candidates, we do reference checks and background checks. So I just want to make sure that's clear, because I've heard kind of out there that appointed means they can just name anyone.
Well, there's a lot of concern about it. They think
Yeah.
it's a political process.
Yeah,
that
and it's
done
not,
right.
and our charter says appointed throughout, like your replacement, it says appointed, they're hired, they're not appointed. So
Well,
I think that message has to get out there at some point, because it's gonna create, I think, a misconception that may cause people to not.
or
think
maybe the
this
word
is
should be
a good idea.
changed.
Yeah.
The confusion with hired, we do have contracted people that are in these positions, so they're not really hired under a contract, they are appointed, but through the process that you
Yeah,
described.
so I don't know if there's a way to
So-
get that misconception out there. I mean, I looked at the charter today and the word appointed is throughout
Right.
it.
I know.
The general statutes refer
Yeah,
to appointment.
so that's,
too.
but I think it just needs to be clear that it means there's a robust process by which we.
Maybe
hire
we just
people.
define it
Yeah,
someplace.
I think you can do that. The other thing that I think is important about these two jobs, and I'll use the town clerk as an example, if they were to remain elected, you could easily run into a situation where someone comes into the job, and I know it happened in another town, and Sally knows the town, they can come in with zero experience, and then you would have a deputy town clerk and an assistant town clerk who work in the department, who get paid less than the town clerk, who would have to train them to do their job. And if you're thinking about how to create a really negative morale environment and horrible employee engagement, that would be the way to do it. So we shouldn't be in a situation where people that work in the town, in the administrative union we have in the town, are required to train someone who get a lot more money, who have no experience. So
That'd be true for the tax collector too.
yeah, both of them. I use the town clerk as the example. But to me, that's the third thing from a human resources perspective that would be a really bad idea. So that's that. So that's on the town clerk and the tax collector. The first selectman, I think the term should be 4 years. I am not sure people realize how difficult the job of first selectman is. Before I came to the town, I worked in the private sector. In my last company, I worked for 4 CEOs in 9 years. I swear to God, the first selectman job is harder than their jobs. It's a really
It's a
tough
$90
job.
million business too.
It's not only you have the whole political external facing part of the job, but you're the CEO of a 130-person company. And I think that really gets lost on people, that is a big part of the first selectman job. And I think when it's a 2-year term, you spend 6 to 8 months trying to figure out the job and how the job works, and then you spend the last 6 to 8 months rerunning for office. So that gives you like a little year in there where you have maybe some continuity in a 2-year term. So I think it's important that the first selectman term be 4 years for that reason. And it's also very disruptive to staff to keep turning over that job every 2 years. So you have department heads who work for this person, and to have that job change every 2 years is disruptive.
Do you have any opinion about changing to a town manager council form of government?
I am on the fence on that for a few reasons. So first of all, and it's not a good reason not to do it, they get paid a lot more money. So Newington just posted a job, town manager. They're a 30,000 employee town. The range is 145,000 to 185,000, significantly higher. I also have seen a lot of town manager jobs turn over a lot. I think people come into those jobs and they don't stay a long time, so I think they're kind of stepping stones for people. So I think there's some benefits, pros, but I think there's cons as well, in my mind.
Kind of depends on the person.
Yeah.
What would you think if, so a lot of people are concerned about making it a 4-year term because what if they don't like the person and they can't vote them out for 4 whole years? But what if we had staggered terms? So in other words, if we had a 4-year first selectman, because you're asking
Yeah.
people to interrupt their career and everything else, and the 2 other selectmen are 2-year terms, because you still have to have a general consensus of the board, so.
I don't think that would be a bad idea. I think the other selectmen are, they're not running the town, so I
Right.
think that would be
But
something.
they still have to agree
Yeah,
with
they still have to
things,
agree,
right?
and that would probably deal with people concerns about political divisiveness. But I do think that, obviously, people are going to elect the selectmen. Hopefully, they're electing someone who's good, who people are going to like. I think the political parties need to do a better job picking people that have skills needed to do the job.
Yeah, well.
I realize that's a big ask.
Well, it didn't used to be, but it's now
Yeah.
questionable.
Somewhat looking at the form of governments too. They're all good and bad, and again, it depends on the people that are in the positions, but, kind of looking to see the towns that have selectmen, town managers, you look at the size of them, and you look at how they're comparable, and many of them have a town manager that are our size. And,
Yeah.
And I know this has been discussed more than one charter revision, so I think it's something we need to maybe look at a little closer.
Yeah, and I also think with the first selectman, if you don't make it 4 years, you're basically going to be getting retired people that want to do it in their spare
Well, that's
time.
it, so in order to
And,
attract someone.
you look at Danielle as an example,
Yeah.
amazing, that, she's been, it'll be 3 terms, but,
Yeah, but what she gave up to do
she gave a
this-
lot,
Yeah,
gave up a lot. And I think if you have it's a 2-year term, you're completely limiting your candidate pool
I
who would
agree.
want to run for
that's
it.
what I think too.
So that's my other view on the 4-year versus 2-year. So those are kind of my main pieces of input, and I have a little selfish one that I'll throw in there at the end. So my title is Director of Administrative Services. No one knows what that means. I'm really the head of Human Resources, and Human Resources is not in my title. So I would love it if you felt compelled to change my title to Director of Human Resources and Administrative Services. Because I literally tell people when I introduce myself, I'm the Director of HR for the town.
Right.
I have other stuff that I do, but when I was hired here, the newspaper announced that I was the Director of Human Services, not Human Resources.
Yeah, I remember.
Because and I'm like, no, Leanne has that job. So just a minor little thing, and it's not important in the scheme of life. In fact, when we posted my job just now, I put in parentheses, includes Human Resources in the job posting, so that HR people would apply for it.
pardon my, is yours a chartered position?
Yeah.
It is, okay.
Well, I lead the Department of Administrative Services, and it says it's headed by a Director of Administrative
Yeah,
Services, so.
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
But we just can change it to administrative services and human resources.
Yeah, whichever way.
Because nowadays, that is what the job is.
As I said, it's not super, I mean, and probably in the old days, it was very different. It was probably, there's very few towns that still have this job title in it. Some still do. Most of them have changed it to HR, but as I said, that's selfish and very small in the scheme of things. But the thing I feel the most strongly about four-year term for first selectman and the town clerk and the tax collector is being hired, appointed, and not elected.
4-year term for first selectman.
Yeah.
As
Thank you.
opposed to 4-year term for the second and third.
Yeah, I don't, that's less important to me. I think you need to be able to attract the right people. If you're not gonna go to a town manager, you need to be able to attract the right people, who want to leave something to become a first selectman for 4 years. They want, for 2 years, it's hard to do
Yeah, because
that.
all you get now is rich people, retirees.
Yeah, rich and retired
You know,
people,
it's like,
you know,
Very good.
or vanity
Yeah.
applicants.
so those would be my pieces of info.
Thank you.
I did read the charter again, cover to cover this morning, those my main pieces of
It's a
info.
surprisingly short document.
It really
And
is.
sometimes raises more questions than it answers.
That's good. And so there's a first selectman and director of administrative services to fill that in. That's a framework. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sally, do you wish to talk?
No, I think I've pretty much said everything
You have.
at the last meeting, but I do agree with another reason for the 4-year term for first selectman is a new person's also coming in and may not necessarily know where their predecessor left off, so by the time they get not only learning the job, but what's going on in town and that kind of thing, but also when I was reading the comments from the opinion article in the Day today, somebody mentioned about this whole town manager and all that kind of business. It's like, well, and then at the end, they just said the tax collector and town clerk isn't gonna matter, because if the question's voted down, it's all voted down, but just remind you that when East Lyme just did it, each section had its own question.
Yeah.
And they had like 13 of them on the
Yeah.
ballot.
I think they had 10 and 7
So
got
it doesn't
approved.
have to be one blanket.
The charter probably speaks to that, though.
Yeah,
Didn't
that's
notice
how East Lyme did it, and they just did theirs, and they did approve their tax collector and their town clerk being
And
appointed.
some things weren't, so it's no, yes, rather than,
That
I
would
know
certainly
the
be better.
2015 one, it was blanket
Yeah,
for us,
right.
but it doesn't have to be that, just keep that in mind.
Appreciate that.
So
I
the
think
charter
I
allows
think
us
that's
to do
really-
it.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, me too.
And when I looked at East Lyme's, a couple of things that didn't get approved related to financial thresholds. Those are the ones that didn't get approved in East Lyme,
Yeah.
but most of their other ones did.
That gives us more flexibility, certainly.
Well, that allows us to expand the scope of it
Right,
too,
right.
without
That's-
blowing the whole thing
Yeah.
up.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Thank you so much. I assume that you're all here for credit, and if you want to say something, you can.
We need to sign their stuff.
All right. Okay, so it's time for us to begin our deliberations, although I would like to have,
More people.
yeah, I'd like to have David and June here. But before we, move on and adjourn, I guess, maybe.
Take our
We should-
temperature.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do.
Sure.
I don't know if you got did you get my email that I sent?
responded.
Oh, you did?
Did you look at
I
my
did.
response?
No, I didn't, because it probably came, or it.
Well, yours
I did.
came very late also.
Oh, Jeepers Pro, we're not gonna get into this. I left before I saw you, it's.
Scary detail person.
Anyways, yeah, so, I haven't read it, but please, go ahead, let's talk,
Well, I think some of the areas, I think we can hopefully narrow it down. I think we have maybe a few legal questions that we can, once we get those responses.
right?
As far as appointment, I have no objection to that. I don't, the word hired was something that I responded to, because
Okay.
looking at Black Laws Dictionary, when you look at employment, it says hired and it's contracted. And we do have people that are contracted by towns to do, to fill in, to do jobs. And I think the general statute says appointment, and I think if we clarify appointment, that's what we're looking for, to appoint the collector and the town clerk, and there's a process, and as indicated, and I think that sort of satisfies that as far as I'm concerned. But
So we have contract employees who,
we don't here, but towns do. They've
Oh.
contracted, maybe an assessor's contracted to come in.
oh, I see,
interim,
okay,
and go through that process.
okay.
But I think,
yeah.
you know, the resolution says hire,
Yes,
and it really, the general statute says appoint, and when you appoint the town clerk, you've got to notify the state, and the law says appointed position, you know, you can elect or appoint them. So I just would be consistent with the general statutes, and that may be a clarification that our attorney can say.
Right.
And then it goes through the hiring process, which is very specific.
Because there was definitely, the word appoint is loaded for a lot of people. I mean,
Right, I can see the,
it's- yeah, they think it's political.
right,
So-
when you run for election, you get appointed, and maybe the Democrat, Republican town committees select somebody, and then they go through that process, but.
I think that's a fantastic point, we appreciate that.
Yeah, and maybe that's something we can say, okay, we've already agreed to at least that part of it,
Yes,
and then move on to other areas, as you indicated. And I think there was another point in there that you mentioned about the traffic commission, and reading the document that was submitted, they have the same attorney that we do. So he's going to write some language so that any subsequent change in the legislation that allowed for that separation of the police commission from the traffic commission could be put into the charter. If the law is passed, then you'll be able to do the ordinance and do the process. So
yes,
that's something we can run by him as well.
absolutely.
But that was in the documentation that was submitted, so.
So let me also say this, that tomorrow, I talk with him after all of our meetings, and I expect that he will be here at our next meeting. He couldn't be here tonight, but regardless, tonight was more information gathering than business, I guess, or substantive deliberations. So I'll talk with him tomorrow, I'll make sure that he gets our, whatever list that we come up with, including that one, and hopefully he'll be here at the next meeting.
And I think the only other area that was in there that was, there are positions, I know Sally mentioned a few positions like that were in the town, IT and such, but they're not department heads as far as the charter is concerned. Those are under other positions. So I think we need to be very specific. If we're taking the town clerk and the tax collector, if we're going to put them in as a department head and list them as such, that not everybody in the flow chart is a department head as it stands from what is presented, and I think that has to be because those positions too, solid waste and IT are in the union. Those are union positions, and those would have to come out of the union to be put in as a department head, and I don't think you want to go in those directions.
Just because you title something a department
No, they
head?
wouldn't have to come out of the union. We have, our town planner's in the union, he has the planning department, so doesn't, a department head could potentially be in the union?
But it's not the title of the job, it's.
No.
It's.
No, but once you became a director, if you were going to be a director, it depends on what you
Wait,
want to call it.
Okay, so you gotta help us, so a department head and a director are different?
No, we consider department heads the lead person for every department. Some are called directors and some are not, depending, like Clifton's the town planner, he's also a department head, we consider him the department head.
Right.
We consider Sally the department head of the clerk's, so when Danielle thinks of the department heads, but per the charter, it's probably a different thing.
Well, it's different because I came out, when my position was taken out as assessor under the Board of Finance, I became a director and I had to get permission to get out of the union. They had to because it was a negotiated, there are certain positions that are negotiated by contract that come under the union. So
you can't be a director and be in the union?
normally you're not. I mean, I don't
okay.
know I've seen that and I mean, maybe you can clarify that, but you can call people whatever you want. But I think that was one of the problems initially and why I became a director is because if you were not a director, you were excluded from meetings, and it depended on who was in office.
Oh.
So when we were having department head meetings, some of us were excluded if you were not, in a political sense. So
Got it.
I think that you want to be clear on how you want to handle this so that everyone is treated the same and that you get that continuity. I mean, there's certain people you want at meetings, and then you can ask whoever you want at a department head meeting.
So just to say, I'm sure it's different by selectmen, but in the current first selectman, everyone who leads a department comes to all of our department head meetings. That includes the building official who's in the union, that includes the town planner who's in the union.
Right.
So there isn't necessarily a small subgroup of people that have director in their title that meet separately, but a different first selectman could come in and do something different. But I'm just saying that's how it is today. So there's a lot of people that come to department head meetings and anyone that can cover. Derek's been at some of them when Jen couldn't be there. But it's anyone who leads a functional department. If you go on our town website, you see all departments. Anyone who leads one of those is considered, from our perspective.
Yeah, but if somebody is actually a director, is that a bigger paycheck?
Not necessarily. It depends on the job. Each job is marketed and paid based on the job. So.
Well, so we have, so it's specifying in this thing, which department gets a director. Is there any reason that that you could think of from a human resources perspective, we should change that?
I'm not sure I would really mess with that. I think you're just going down a rabbit hole a little bit. But.
Yes, because nobody is complaining that your Department of Public
it's
Works.
not an issue that I'm aware of.
Okay,
Can I just say?
There is a difference, so I just want to be aware of that when we do this.
Go ahead, Sally.
I don't think that town clerk and tax collector should be in a union.
No, I wouldn't think they would be.
Because the deputy
No,
is
yeah,
and the
yeah,
assistant
yeah, no.
is, and I think that should be out of the union, whether you call it director or department head.
so when you're dealing with the union, is it done by the title or, so if we don't call a town clerk, if we make that an appointed position, a director, are they necessarily in the union?
No, I don't think, and I don't think.
So I don't know how that works.
No, and I don't think the union would push to have them in either. The union could say, hey, if you're doing that, we want them in, and the town would say, yeah, no, we don't want them in.
None of the town
Okay,
clerks.
so it doesn't go by that,
No, it doesn't.
okay.
I think there's a subtle but kind of important difference between what's chartered and what's not chartered. The things that are not chartered are operational
Yeah.
versus substantive or formal. And what the charter does is give a framework for the heads to make the operational decisions or to bring in the people, but it's a
Right.
kind of a subtle. And it's tough to talk about it and make the distinction.
Right,
But
but
it's
I think
understandable.
it has happened, because
Yeah.
I know that things have happened, depending on who's at the head of the Board of Selectmen. And fortunately, I hope it never happens again, but you need to be independent and you need to be part of the group. I mean, to function properly in the town hall, you need to know what's going on in the planning and zoning department, you need to know what's going on in the collector's office, certain individuals need that and they need representation. And if the charter is being used not to allow that, which it can be done, because people are elected, and sometimes you can make the job perfect, but you have to hope that you have good people getting in.
Right.
And that's covered by the selectmen, not by the Department of Human Resources or the
Yeah, I
Administrative
mean, the first
Services.
selectman decides how they
How that's
want to
gonna
do it.
run.
The current person's very inclusive and bringing
Right.
people together.
Anything else? I take it that's in your email too, that you sent. What you said just now is basically covered in your email?
Not exactly.
No, I didn't really get into that. I just think that, it's sort of a clarification on
Okay.
how it does. I know,
All
the
right.
charter really is a guide, and then most of the operational part is from the charter. You have your ordinances and you have your operation from that. So we want to, you want to make sure this is as clear as possible,
Yes.
so that town can function based off of that.
All right. Any other comments, Lynn?
No, not really.
Okay.
I think this is pretty
I think we're in a good position to do our deliberations and set our priorities rather quickly. It depends on some of the answers we get from our
Lawyer.
attorney, just to make sure, just to be sure. But, for example, if we're able to do this, if we're able to vote on a line item, for example, as opposed to the whole document, gives us a lot more
Right.
flexibility in how we
And
can
I
deal
think,
with this.
like WPCA, if you want to address that about extending,
Yeah, we just need.
nobody has really mentioned
Why,
anything.
yeah, why,
Yeah.
why
do we need
do they
alternates?
want two alternates?
Well,
not
I
think it's
actually
cool.
want them because
Yeah.
the people on that board are there forever. I've been on that thing for, I think, 22 years now.
Okay,
Because the learning curve is really steep and the institutional knowledge component of it is important.
Mhm.
So we are getting pretty gray on that thing. We have a kind of a perfect board in terms of who's on it. We have a municipal lawyer, a finance person. We have a guy who ran the sewer department in Hartford, another guy who dealt with stuff, pipes, and an engineer. But they're also hard jobs to fill because it's not a sexy commission, right? But it's a critical commission. So we want to put alternates in there so that they can get that learning curve before they have to actually make these decisions.
so it's an easy one, you know?
I would think, no, you know.
Yeah, so, good.
Or at least to have the ability to do it, and I just prescribed by charter that we can't.
Very good.
The one on the traffic commission separating from the police commission, they were talking about having people with technical backgrounds, engineers or people that knew about street signs and such. I think sometimes the public, you come to it, you go to that same spot day after day after day, and sometimes you feel that maybe there should be something there. But I don't know whether you can be a subcommittee of the police commission or if you have enough people, to.
Having served on the police commission, I'm strongly against doing I think the system works, okay? The police, not only do they have their input and are they responsible for public safety, they are mandated under the law to be the traffic control authority in town. Not only are they mandated to do that, but when there is, for example, subdivisions or something that involves planning and zoning has to have their input too. So it's not just, there's a lot of moving parts in that organization, in that process. So you open up a can of worms.
I'd like to hear from Jay on
if-
that.
Yeah,
But would it be more
interesting.
advantageous maybe to have additional members, or no, is it limited?
So you have
Do they have
to,
enough members?
You got 5, right?
yeah, on the police commission, you have 5 members.
Mhm.
Ideally, the way, you should have a strong police chief who, and captain who sort of direct things. It's like having the chair of a meeting. They're the real chairs. They really provide the input and the direction for where the police commission goes. And they know, they're supposed to know what they're talking about. And if they don't know what they're talking about, then there's somebody else who looks over their shoulder. That's the police commission. And if there is a further issue, like for planning and zoning looks over it too. So you have to have input from the engineers, who supposedly all know this 1,000-page document, of the National Highway Transportation Safety Standards, and you really are opening up a can of worms. Interestingly enough, the article that lady provided talked about a town that tried to go through that process. It had to go, you need this special legislation to do it, and the special legislation never made it out, that was never voted on. So it died in its tracks. But in this town, we're fortunate that we have people who are on these commissions, planning and zoning, police commission, who are active members of the community, who take pride, at least what I've seen, take a great deal of pride in the position on which they serve, and my experience, having been on the police commission, is we go out there and look at these things, and we make sure, with the assistance of the police administration, that the traffic safety changes or the traffic changes that are suggested and made are done according to standard. So I think that system works, and I'm against doing something separate.
Do we want to deal with term limits since they're technically illegal, or just leave them in there as, because if we
I'm
can
gonna-
separate out the,
It's a question that he listen, Steve, our attorney opened up
Yeah.
the door on that, and I'm gonna ask him to explain himself. And I don't know, because if it's not legal and we can make it legal, fine. If it's illegal, or if it's not legal, it shouldn't be in there, but I don't know, we should talk.
yeah, I would not touch it based on the way he was discussing it, because I mean, I think he said that there was no enabling legislation for it, so it's technically illegal, but on a practical basis, you'd have to go through the courts and sue, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But if we get to, have yes or no's, like Lyme did, or East Lyme, and it corrects something that's illegal.
You got
that we-
line
Well, I
items,
don't-
it's
I don't
easy to
think-
do.
That, right,
I don't think we can correct anything in there other than taking the term limits away, which I don't want to do. I think what I would.
even if they're illegal?
Well, if there are illegal, we would.
Well, he
probably-
said
we
they
would have
were.
no we would
He
have
was
no
very clear
choice.
about that,
However,
but they're,
He was clear, I don't know that the law is as clear as
Oh.
he is. That's,
What-
oh,
but
okay.
go ahead.
Well, what I would suggest is, we have time to submit proposed legislation, which could go through the selectman's office. And 9-202 is the Board of Finance section. So we can adjust this or not. I mean, it talks about the terms and such, but at the very end, for proposed legislation, subsequent terms of office immediately following 2 consecutive terms may be established by municipal charter. If this section is amended, it would be a moot point. And if we can get the legislation in before this comes up before a vote, we don't have to worry about it. And I would suggest we go that route after the attorney looks at it and decide, he can change the wording slightly, but we have a whole session coming up. It has no impact on other municipalities. It's not an expense to anybody. It's, we should be able to get our representatives to put it through. And-
get it through.
And get it
Harder
through.
part.
You know,
Can I see that?
so.
Sure, yeah. What number is it, by the way? Up top?
9202.
Okay.
And this is this is alternates. It gets into alternates, but
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, good point, and like I said, thanks.
you can't do a special act because you can't do something illegal that the general statutes don't give you, so I couldn't go that route, so.
Okay. It's stuff that we should deal with our attorney and get those answers, because we can move. I'd like to move quickly on these things, because if we can do it sooner rather than later and address the issue of having an extended, having to go another 4 years before we have this change effective for the town clerk, and I'd like to move on it sooner rather than later.
I don't think, though, the time frame is gonna allow us to do that. I think
We'll
it would
see.
be really tight if we did.
I
I think
know-
you wanna
know.
get this through too. I mean,
I know it'll be tight, but it's another question that I'm gonna talk to the attorney about.
Because we touched on it, and he was like, it was doable, but it was very aggressive.
It is.
But there's nothing that stops them from reconstituting the same exact people for a second charter commission if we took care of this, at least for the election in
Right.
this cycle.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
to have them.
Yeah, well,
I see what you're
so
saying.
that's probably, when we prioritize, if we say that we're gonna do things that we think we have, that are the most important, and have the best opportunity of passing without making it weaker with adding these other things in, one idea is to do it that way, and we've done our job, and if somebody wants to appoint, if the select people want to appoint a new charter revision commission for next year, that's fine too. We've done it quickly and addressed
But it still
need.
doesn't it's not gonna resolve the Board of Finance, though. because
I'm not even thinking about that, I was just,
Yeah.
somebody just suggested out there in the ether that term limits were illegal based on state statutes.
Yeah.
I don't, believe me, they don't need to go any more terms than there already exist from my perspective.
But by the same
But-
token, like with on the
But planning and zoning is
WPCA,
too,
we have,
WPCA is unlimited.
yeah,
you know,
and so, and so that collective knowledge
but
is
it
pretty
gives
darn
you,
good.
well,
It's
but it
important.
gives you that authority.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing a good job, and I guess you can get elected and whatnot, that's good, but one of the reasons that this came up in the last charter thing was because of dissatisfaction with the, people serving on the board for 24 years and being appointed from a town committee and all of that. You actually have to get yourself elected, maybe the term limits don't matter as much. But personally, it's nice to know there's a limit.
Takes care of some problems.
It does, no, I
Takes
mean,
care of some,
yeah,
takes care of a lot of issues,
Yeah, it
and
does.
for those who
it does.
get tired, it's a nice exit.
Yeah. But,
Nice way to exit.
but there's certainly a lot of, continuity needed for that. And I would also say planning and zoning, but of course what they've done is they've just skipped a term and allowed you to come back and do another 3,
Right.
or
Yeah,
another
did
2
that.
in planning and zoning and whatnot.
Yep.
It's true.
Yeah, I'd have to think about whether that was.
I,
I'm sure of 2 things, I guess, entirely, well, 3 things.
Death and taxes.
Death and taxes some more. 3 things. The alternates for the WPCA is easy. After what I've witnessed from the town committees and the simple registrar of voters stuff, I absolutely think that the town clerk and the tax collector need to be appointed. And I think that,
and not only that, I think that should be done sooner.
I think
rather than
if
later.
there's any way to get that done and only that
Yeah.
by, November of this year, I would be all for that. I would we can have a meeting a week, but the problem was the statutory notice requirements has to go to the Board of Selectmen, they have to do their thing expeditiously, there has to be a public hearing, and I don't know if at this point, if we could make it. I mean, it's all laid out in here, so we can figure it out.
We should talk about it at the next meeting I will send out an email saying it would be nice if we were prepared to vote on those things at the next meeting. So I'll send out that notice, but we're ready to move along. But do it in a prudent fashion, and I think this discussion shows that we are prudent about it, although we want to be as broad as we possibly can, we also want to make changes that are important, that can succeed, if those changes are really that important, and not dilute the process by putting too much stuff in there.
Yeah, the best thing is be able to have yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
It would be.
But anyway, those are the 3 things I know, Very little's gonna change my mind on that at this point.
Okay,
Especially considering that under being hired,
Yeah.
I believe, might have been Linda Camilio at the public hearing, said that you don't actually have to show up for a day of work
No, we don't.
When you're elected.
when you're
When you're
elected,
elected.
right? So, that's not good.
Fortunately, right now, things are working, and I mean,
It's not a problem until it's a problem.
It's not-
Yeah, we don't track time for elected officials.
and when it becomes a problem, it's a problem.
Sally does come to work every day.
Yes, I do. I work more after than I did when I was assistant, believe it or not, I have more hours.
Imagine that. All right.
But then the other thing to keep in mind though, which I know you're thinking of time, but September 5th is the deadline for the selectmen to get the approved question to me. And I have until September 21st-ish to get it to the Secretary of State. So
I'd
you're
love
not, you can't think November, if it works, it's gonna be like the beginning of September.
I'd love to oblige.
Oh, I know, but
Well,
that's
June,
why-
July, August, if we can fit the
when
time
you look
frame in
back
for
at the
that.
timeline, it may or may not work, I
Yeah.
realize that, but
Well, there is a whole thing in here about
that's
it.
a different, bring that date to you.
I don't know who put those things together.
When a hearing after draft report is completed, charter revision submits a draft report. They have 45 days to report. And then you have another 15 days, 30
I-
days.
So,
They have to be motivated to want to do it.
right,
Yeah.
so don't agonize over that timeline right now. I'm gonna ask our attorney what we can do.
Okay.
Because, listen, I have time with stuff that I do in my own work. I have time constraints and it'll depend on him too. It really will, and,
Yeah, he didn't, I mean, he said very clearly at the last meeting, it's doable, that he was at, it's doable, but
Yeah.
it's really.
let's see,
you
let's
know,
see,
a
let's talk,
sprint. Yeah,
let's talk.
I'd like to at least get that done if we could, because
Good.
there's ramifications to that, immediate ramifications, so.
Anything else for the good of the cause? Hearing nothing, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Oh, motion made and seconded, thank you so much, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.